Can you imagine Africa's barren desert turning into a completely green paradise? Let me tell you, just 2 years ago, before any work began on this land, the whole area was nothing but dry, lifeless ground. There wasn't a single plant, and no one had cultivated it for a full 40 years. When the United Nations World Food Program told the villagers that they would bring this land back to life as part of the Great Green Wall Project, the locals thought it was absolutely impossible. But here we are now, in Africa, specifically in the desert on the northern edge of Senegal, where life has returned once again. This is extremely important because when soil is eroded and the land becomes barren and turns into desert, people are forced to abandon their homes and migrate to cities. Places like this collapse and get completely destroyed. But thanks to the efforts of the villagers and the World Food Program, and through techniques and systems that we will explain in detail in this video, the situation has completely changed. Natural vegetation has started to grow again, increasing the income of the people living here and improving their lives. Andrew Milson traveled to Senegal during the planting season to see for himself the work being carried out as part of Africa's Great Green Wall Project. Together with his wife, he began the journey from Dakar, the largest city in Senegal, with a population of around 4 million. It is also the westernmost point of mainland Africa. There, they met with World Food Program officials in Dakar to discuss the details of their upcoming trip. Afterwards, they traveled with the World Food Program team by car for about 7 full hours across the Sahel region of Africa. Along the way, the ecosystem changed noticeably. In the southern part, the trees were larger and scattered among millet fields. Millet is a grain-like plant valuable as animal fodder and used for many other purposes. The further north they went, the smaller the trees gradually became.
At that time, the rainy season had just passed, which meant the land was in its greenest state throughout the entire year. Andrew said he had never seen such a large number of animals gathering like that, and the whole Sahel region felt like a massive open zoo for everyone. They kept driving until they reached the point where the Sahara Desert begins, at the Senegal River. This river separates Senegal on one side from Mauritania on the other. If you look at it from space, you can clearly see the Mauritanian sand dunes stretching all the way to the Senegal River. The river truly represents the dividing line between the deserts and the Sahel. In many areas, the Senegal River not only serves as the border between Senegal and Mauritania, nor is it just a natural division between the Sahel and the desert. If the land around this river becomes full of vegetation, it can be considered the first line of defense in the Great Green Wall Project against the advance of the African desert. I need you to focus now, because we're going to explain the Great Green Wall in a very powerful way that you will absolutely love. The Great Green Wall is the concept of a massive project whose main goal is to plant a barrier of trees stretching across the entire width of Africa, from Senegal in the west to Djibouti in the east. The main purpose of this wall is to stop the advance of the Sahara Desert towards southern Africa, since the desert has expanded by about 10% over the past 100 years, which is an extremely large percentage. The idea is that this barrier of trees will halt the desert's expansion southward. Andrew went there himself to show us how land that had been destroyed can be restored, how the spread of deserts can be stopped, and how abundance in production can be created so people can live here and benefit from it. Through the World Food Program, around 300,000 hectares of land have been replanted and rehabilitated in recent years.
And imagine that everything you see in front of you is only 300 hectares of the entire project, just a very small part of this vast area. This is considered a contribution to the Great Green Wall Project because the wall is like separate pieces of fabric that, when stitched together, form the massive barrier that will protect the entire Sahel region. Each country is responsible for a certain section until the whole project is completed. They are working on land that was completely degraded and bringing it back to life. This process happens in several stages. When they start in areas like the one you're looking at now, the soil is hardened and compacted by the sun to the point that it cannot support any form of life. It is literally as solid as cement. It's impossible for seeds or plants to germinate in it. That's why it's necessary to restore this land to life and productivity, so it can provide enough food for people and help communities in this region thrive once again. Now, let's look at the most important techniques used to rehabilitate this land. The first thing they do is create structures for collecting water, ensuring that rainfall stays in place. These structures are known as half-moon water catchments. If you look at the soil as it is now, water can't remain there. It runs off immediately and then evaporates completely. The crescent-shaped ridges are the first step in the rehabilitation process. For example, at this site, they dug about 7,500 pits, each 4 meters wide. Creating one of these structures takes a single person an entire day. The whole area was excavated by a team of 150 people. But how exactly does the half-moon pit work? When rain falls here, the pits are positioned along contour lines, meaning they follow equal elevation. This allows rainwater to flow and accumulate in slightly lower areas, so it is retained. They also build a small soil embankment on the upper side to make sure the water doesn't escape at all, ensuring that the water stays here.
To nourish the plants, they primarily use local species, such as millet and sorghum, which have been cultivated in this region for thousands of years. These crops are very well suited to the soil and climate, and they also produce the highest amount of biomass. That's why they are excellent examples of land rehabilitation here, while at the same time providing food for the people. This is not something new. They haven't invented a new technique here. The half-moon pits are actually an ancient technique used in the Sahel, and older generations used them all the time. But over the years, people forgot about them, and now they have been brought back to life again. The millet plants you see behind them grew using nothing but rainwater. Around 10 to 15% of the water collected here is absorbed by the soil and transformed into groundwater. In this way, they are achieving a balance in water use, not only consuming water resources, but also ensuring that enough remains within the land for future generations. In case you've forgotten, we're still talking about the techniques being used here. We already covered the half-moon structures, and now we'll talk about integrated farming systems. This idea is truly remarkable because it relies mainly on planting parallel rows with vegetable beds in between, where crops like tomatoes and okra are grown. They also have trenches where they planted moringa and peas, and even okra sprouted on its own. The idea behind these biomass trenches is that they will provide organic matter for the soil as the system matures. Between the trenches, there are also planting pits where fruit trees have been introduced, such as guava and citrus. This is just the first step in this pilot project. They will also be using other local species to plant in these pits. Once the system fully matures, it will resemble a forest, with rows of trees producing both biomass and fruit, and other rows in between producing vegetables. This is exactly how nature itself operates.
They were introduced to a type of farming called syntropic farming, which is a new approach to conservation agriculture developed in Brazil. It is based on the ancient knowledge of indigenous peoples around the world. Many indigenous communities have their own traditional methods of farming that differ from modern production systems, and these methods imitate the way forests naturally function. In the next step, and here comes the surprise I mentioned, they are going to plant a tree here. If we look at this vast area, it's clear that they could plant tens of thousands of trees within these structures. This project is very important because the World Food Program wanted to demonstrate how even the most degraded land can be transformed into fertile ground that produces food once again. They specifically chose this project on land that had been severely degraded, hardened, and covered with dust. Because of this, the project we have seen so far truly represents the first step of the Great Green Wall. In this region, the Senegal River serves as the real dividing line between the desert and the Sahel region. That's why the work carried out by the World Food Program is directly addressing the problem right here. And the surprise I promised you is that the second part of this project is already available on the channel. where you can see the progress that has been made and how it has completely transformed the lives of local communities. You can click on it and watch from here. Goodbye.